panels you've seen today. There it is. That's on me, and I'm sorry, and I apologize. All right. Today we're talking about sustainability on set. The next panel is going to really nail it, but I'm a host who's trying to do his best, so I did a little bit of research before this just so I could familiarize myself with what that might mean. Somebody just popped some champagne over here? Hell yeah, dude. Lower your expectations for this bit, my friend. All right, let's start it out. What's the number one sustainability rule? The 3 R's, of course. Let's say it all together. Ready? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Very good. And there's even... Okay, cool it. I have a whole bit. We're gonna get there. Frickin' Johnny Bit Stealers. Stop yelling. All I wanted was these 3 yells, and then that's it. There will be more opportunity to yell. Don't raise your hand. That's not how we yell. Put your hands down. What is happening? I'm losing control. Put your hands down. Stop. Whatever this is, it's a no. It's going to be a no from me. No. Put your hands down. We have more bit to do. All right, now I'm rude. Okay, yes, you can tell me one thing. Really? Excellent. This is excellent stuff because we're actually going to wipe this off the screen right now. Thank you very much. Okay, so all right, I've obviously lost control of the whole slideshow in the audience, but we're actually going to get there. So thank you for saying that, because I didn't pay for this graphic design. I stole it from the internet. So take that, oil and gas. I was looking around, and there's been evolutions in the 3 R's. Okay, we're taking it back from the oil and gas company. Here are the next evolution. I'm sorry. You've thrown me off. We'll get there. We'll get there, lady in the sunglasses in the second row. Cool it. Holy moly. And the sign language interpreters are going crazy. All right, here we go. Let's focus. Okay, so we're treating this, which is an oil industry propaganda term created in the 1980s, a thing I totally knew and didn't just learn from that lady. We're treating recycle like it is the Beyonce and the Destiny's Child of reduce, reuse, recycle. But really, we should be treating reduce, reuse as Beyonce and the recycle as the other two. This is how we should be treating it. But there have been evolutions. We got the 5 R's, okay? So we've been expanding it, and that's why we've been acting together for 10 years. This is a bit that we've been doing where she comes to my shows and yells at me for 5 minutes. We, of course, have refuse. Okay, thank you. And then we have reduce, reuse, recycle. And finally, rot. That's the evolution. That's the 5 R'd version. If you got food, let it rot. It's compost. Okay, there's also the 7 R's. Again, I've stolen this graphic design. I'm not paying for that. It's on the internet. It's free. The 7 R's, of course, start with rethink. Pretty cool, huh? Paradigm shift. Pretty interesting. Then refuse. Where are my refuse heads at? Okay, very cool. And then, of course, we got reduce, reuse, repair. That's good. If it's broken, repair it. And if it's broken and you repair it and you still don't like it, regift it. Pretty good. And then recycle. And that's it, is what I should be saying. Until some goddamn maniac came out with the 9 R's. Where will it end? What are the 9 R's? Okay, let's drop back into this. We got rethink, refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, regift, recycle. And then this absolute freak of nature tacked on 2 extra ones. Refurbish, which I'm thinking, refurbish, that's repair, dog. You don't get extra credit for doing a synonym. And then the last one, of course, refill. Refill? That's reuse! What are we doing? So tonight, before we start the panel, which we're already late because I've been fighting for my life against a hostile audience. Christ. My name is Raleigh Williams, by the way. I have a YouTube channel. I'm taking this moment to take back control. We're going to quickly come up with a 9th R to make this man stop. And I don't want to do this any more than you do, but we cannot go on to the panel of actual experts until we as a group come up with a good 9th R. What do we got? I heard revolt. I kind of like revolt because that ties into stopping the 3 R's that was created by the oil and gas industry. Revolt sounds good. All in favor of revolt? Okay, I know a pity applause when I hear one. Let's get on to the actual panel, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. From the Academy itself, the Chief Membership Impact and Industry Officer, Meredith Shea, everybody. Give it up big, Meredith Shea.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us in person and for those of you who are joining us virtually. I am pleased to be here this evening with this very distinguished panel. I want to start by introducing the one and only Academy Governor, Miss Missy Parker, who serves as a production designer on such amazing films as Hidden Figures and Transformers: Age of Extinction. Next up, we have writer, director, producer Scott Burns. Many of you might know his film Contagion, as well as The Report. And last but certainly not least, former Academy Governor and costume designer Isis Munsenden, who brought us the amazing costume designs from Shrek and American Psycho. So I really just want to start by thanking the Hollywood Climate Summit for partnering with us, specifically Allie, Allison, and Heather for all of their work. The Academy is so honored to be hosting this week of events. We're conveners, and it's really important that we're able to bring these industry conversations together. I also wanted to take a moment to thank the amazing Academy teams that are here tonight, starting with our incredible theater operations team from the booth to the board that keep us running. Our amazing member relations, global outreach and awards team, specifically Angelica Cervantes, who put this together with Jen Ledbury. And last but certainly not least, our amazing Goldies who are here tonight, our Gold Rising interns. So on behalf of Academy CEO Bill Kramer and President Janet Yang, the Academy is a global organization, and we represent the most accomplished filmmakers, artists, executives working in film today. And what makes this panel unique is that we have 3 people from completely different departments, different branches of the Academy, and we wanted to talk about the specific roles that all of you have on set. And, in the spirit of collaboration, I wanted to ask why it's important for departments to work together in film and sustainability. So, Missy, I'll throw it over to you first.
Great. Hi, I'm Missy Parker. I'm a set decorator working within the production design branch. And as a set decorator, we work hand in hand, obviously, with construction and paint to build and create the sets that the stories are based off of. So that requires a lot from all sides. And particularly with set decorating, I try in my own way to be able to reuse. For instance, we will buy furniture from used stores, we'll do antique sales. We set out with that goal first before going to an IKEA or something like that. So all those small starts, depending on the script, is where we really try to start the process in our work, pulling from places that furniture's already had a life, some curtains have already had a life, a picture frame. And in that way, I really feel like we get to continue the life of that object and create a new story for it. So that's one of the ways we start with that.
And Scott, how do you collaborate across departments? When I think of you as a producer, director, writer, you're working with so many different department heads, and why is collaboration important in this work?
I think one of the things we have to address within our industry is that, people who are HODs want to please, and they want to fulfill a director's vision, or writer's vision, or producer's instructions, and they do that zealously and in a well-intentioned way to serve the story. And I think what we need to do is change our culture on set so that we're thinking about more than just accomplishing that scene, that moment. Can we do it within the boundaries of sustainability? And by communicating with one another about what the limitations are, can we begin to dial back some of the excesses that we sometimes slip into?
And Hollywood is a place of excess. So, Isis, why is collaboration important in your role as a costume designer?
Well, I think if we think about putting a film together, it's impossible to do it without all the disciplines working together to make that film. So if we think about sustainability, I think we have to think the same thing. I think we all have to, like Scott just said, it has to come from the top. It has to become a priority, and it has to become a part of what is, you can bring the product, whatever product each one of us is, whether it's the set decorating or the costumes or the craft service or the drivers, whatever it is, if there's an umbrella that there's been a kind of a mandate and that it's okay, is what you're saying. It's okay to say, hey, look, I found this thing, or I think that if we do it this way, we'll do it better. We can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. We have bits and pieces within our own departments that we can and do, and we can talk about that a little more today, but it won't make as big an impact unless we completely collaborate together.
And I want to go back, Missy, when you think of production design, art direction, set decoration, even locations, they're really a materials-heavy department. What are the most resourceful, or, within those teams, how do you create eco-resources so everyone is on the same page? I think when you talk about collaboration, but in materials heavy, it might not match the same thing that's happening in sound or visual effects. So just speaking to a materials heavy discipline.
So within the production design branch and the film within production design, we really, we start out with the story, we break it down, the designers and decorators work with the director to create this vision, and that does require material goods such as wood for construction and paint. It requires fabrics and textiles and furnishings and all of that coming together to create these environments that help us tell the story. One of the ways we work with our location managers is we look for a home that we could possibly go into, and as opposed to construction and the art department having to build a new location, we can go into that location. There's still work to be done, but there's less of a footprint because there's an existing world there that we're going to either add on to or adjust within our world. So it's a smaller sort of experience in terms of usage. And then within building the sets, which is still a real thing we have to do to tell, a futuristic story or a story that's in a spaceship. Obviously, that's not a location you can find most of the time. So you have to come up with the most effective way. And the set designers and the art directors, they draft and they draw, and we all pull our inspiration from research and from real objects, and everyone tries to figure out the most collaborative and cohesive way to tell that part of the story. So anywhere where we can figure out a way where it doesn't have to be a full build, everyone from the producers down are always obviously happy. And in terms of the set decorating world of that too, we have prop houses that we can rent from, which is another way that we're able to not even have to go out and buy something, even if it is something used. And if we're building something alongside construction, we'll go about the way of trying to figure out the most effective way to do it with the least amount of intrusion. So
I feel I'm going to quote Jen Pascal here, where she said that production designers and set decorators were the original thrifters, and no one should take that credit away from them. So
I know every thrift store across the country. So come see me.
We need the list. Share the
Come
list,
see
please.
me.
Share
It's
the
top
list
secret, top
for us.
Also estate sales now. That's
Okay.
that is a tooth and nail drag out fight. I was in Oklahoma elbowing people. But I had to get the chair.
Yeah.
That's what I have to
get
do.
it. Issa's same question about materials. I think for a lot of viewers, when you're watching something on screen, we maybe think that we're looking at a very expensive silk dress when in actuality it could be a different kind of fabric because you have to find different pieces of how it'll be on camera. What are some resources that you would share when it comes to the materials that are used, the textiles when it comes to costume design?
Well, textiles are tricky because, especially if you're doing a period piece, because they're not the same. Then you can find vintage fabrics, which we look for voraciously when we're doing a period piece, because then you can make the piece look real and feel real and for the actors. But textiles are. It's across America and across Europe when we're searching for fabrics, and it is the one thing that we buy new to make something, unless it's a vintage piece of fabric, because 99% of the time we are using recycled vintage pieces from the costume houses. Los Angeles has about 8 enormous costume houses, from Western costumes to American costumes, CRC, motion picture, where there are these airplane hangar size buildings, which are the biggest thrift shops you've ever seen. And we rent from them over and over and over. So inherently in my field, we have been sustainable with a lot of clothing. We rent and we reuse and we rent and we reuse and we rent and we reuse. When we're making is when we're creating our footprint, because we're taking textiles, unless they were already vintage, and creating something new and putting something else into the world. But that goes back to the costume house, and then it gets rented again and again and again once it's released from the film.
I want to switch gears into animated filmmaking, because both you and Scott have worked on animated films, and I know, Missy, you've also worked on visual effects. I want to know, when you're working with that medium of filmmaking, Scott, how sustainability practices can come into an animated project. And then, Isis, I will definitely throw that question to you, because I think so many people think of eco practices as they're related to live action films. Obviously, there's documentary storytelling where they could be enlightening us on current climate issues. But, what are the practices that you could bring to all types of filmmaking, as you've worked across many mediums?
Again, it's a lot of it is, it's just materials, and it's going into, even from pre-production on, and understanding that whatever you're going to create for the film, you got to take personal responsibility for. And again, culturally, I don't know that we've always had that point of view. And it goes to this thing of, well, if I'm making it for the movie, then I'm doing the right thing, because the movie's going out into the world and everything else is okay. And it's not okay. So I think the important thing is, from the very beginning, to get everyone together and go, what are we making here that we can, not to do the R thing, but that we can be responsible, the new R.
New art.
For. So, and I think you need to imbue that into everyone at the very beginning of the production, so that that's what's governing your decision-making process. When things are animated and there's cells and there's waste that gets done, a lot of that can be done digitally. And so there is some great stuff about technology that is making things possible. And that actually works the other way too. It used to be, we were talking this morning, that on a live action piece or even on an animated piece, you would get to set and someone would hand you a stack of pages and go, here are today's sides. You don't need to do that anymore. And the other thing that I'll say is, it's also really important to understand that not all of our waste is created equally on a set. If you really look at it, so much of where our waste goes is transportation. Transportation and food. much like the rest of the world. And so being thoughtful about transpo and being thoughtful about location scouting and all of these other things, like that's where we're really, really hurting ourselves and the planet.
Isis?
So, no, that's interesting. Transportation and
Yes.
food. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. For me, the most sustainable thing I've ever done was an animated film because I didn't have to buy any fabric, and I didn't have to use a sewing machine or hire a crew or make anything. So it was, I mean, other than maybe some digital waste or some, office, but really, other than little small swatches, that's all I had to do. So it was that just, the difference is massive.
And oh wait, I had a note about so I just worked on the film Twisters that's coming out soon, and they had a panel last night. They did a panel here as well, and that's a great film to talk about in regards to sort of all of this, because they're on that film, which is heavy in VFX but also very heavy in set deck. We actually talked a lot with each other about how much do you guys need, where does the real life layering end. We ended up doing a lot of real set dressing debris. So in that situation, the art department, for instance, didn't have to carve or build any fake debris. We ended up buying parts of houses that were already being torn down. We went, again, thrift stores to weird auctions to estate sales and reused and, destroyed some furniture for sure. But when talking to the VFX team, we came to a great place a few times where they could say, we really need stuff on the top of that roof. And, we were able to provide that. And then they would fill in the rest. And it was a really helpful conversation for everyone. And at times we didn't need as much as they needed. And other times the real story really needed to be physical and have that reality. And then afterwards, with the pieces of furniture that weren't destroyed, we were able to donate, which we just did on the last film as well, to women's shelters, to theater programs in Oklahoma. We can break down pieces of the set, flats, et cetera, and make sure that they still continue to be useful to the community that we're filming in.
That's really, I think, amazing to hear, because in this industry there's so many people. There's obviously different cities where filming is happening: Atlanta, New Orleans, and Chicago, Los Angeles. There's so many places, but you are going into a city and becoming a part of that ecosystem in so many senses of the words. I'm jumping around a little bit. I'm nonlinear a little bit, like a David Lynch film up here. But I did want to ask Scott, how do you create a character and a surroundings that integrate climate storytelling into a film?
Oh, that.
Oh, that.
Well, look, I don't think, the audience gives you a pass and says, oh, this is a climate movie, so it's good for the world, so I should watch it and care. People show up and they spend their very hard-earned money and give us their very hard-earned time, and it's really incumbent on us to entertain, amaze, amuse, and so I always start there. Like, my goal is to try and create characters and stories that people will be fascinated by. And that's how I think about them. When I think about us and what my responsibility is as a filmmaker to the other people I work with on a set, what I try and do is think about the fact that we are being watched. Our industry is frequently a target, and people love holding us up as hypocrites or whatever. And you need to think about that because we can do a better job with things like, private jets or, press tours. So there are all these things that become part of the filmmaking process that you also need to take responsibility for beyond your discipline. I know that didn't answer your question, but I didn't want to.
Fair enough. I love the honesty. I feel like there must be creative demands when it comes to environmental values. And, I'll pose that question to you, Isis, first, but just when it comes to creating characters and that storytelling process, that there are, to your point, Scott, so many people are watching us. And there's an example to lead that this is something, if people see themselves, they can be it. So I'm curious, when it comes to creating, visual environments and characters, what are those little things that, maybe the audience might not recognize on screen? So Isis, I'm curious.
I mean, that's kind of difficult because in the creative process, you're so character driven. So if I have a character written who happens to be quirky, or and I'm a seamstress. I come from sewing. I'm a seamstress, so I love to create. So even my very first job, which people, I would have gone off to the stores and bought stuff that didn't make any sense to me. So I got some thrift stuff and I redid it, and that was just who I am as a designer. So creatively, I feel like it's first of all more interesting. And I think it's more individualistic to a character to create something that I can't just buy off the rack. That's just creatively for myself, is who I am. But there are those characters that are right out of Rodeo Drive, and then you have to look at that. We all have to do better. Listen, just even having this conversation tonight is making me think about things at the very beginning of a job that I could make, that I could be more cognizant of. I mean, we have things we already do. We know how to get the waste at the end of the projects to the proper places, to the textiles refurbishing. I was just talking to Homeboys Textiles now. The fantastic Homeboys, amazing Homeboys last year have started a brilliant textile division, and it's extraordinary. And I know that the fashion companies are involved, but I'd like to get, because I've just recently found this out and have been doing some research on them. Now we've got to get the film industry involved. And I know that the Academy deals with Homeboy Electronics, which is another, it's just incredible the work they're doing on so many levels. So if we can just keep helping the communities, and you've got Habitat for Humanity, you've got all these things, we know that we've been doing that at the end of every film, because at the end of every film we have a lot of waste, so we have to figure out what to do with that. But it's the beginning of every film, I think, now is kind of the shift, is what I'm hearing tonight. And
I'll say also on that sort of micro note of the smaller things that have happened. I just wrapped a show, and large set pieces aside, just in the office, I was laughing because we used to have boxes and boxes of files of research and paperwork and invoices and all of that, and then all the film processing we used to do for set decorating, and copies of films and pickup envelopes, and all of that has gotten very digitized now. So the scripts are digital, call sheets are digital, everything in the art department is issued digitally, and if you want a hard copy, you can ask for it. But I was surprised just on the office level how much less paper waste there is in general, which is one small
we still
step.
have a long way to go,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
but it's worlds away from 10 years ago.
Yeah. It used to be binders and binders and binders.
But to answer your question,
Please.
I think for all filmmakers, we live in a certain moment, and we need to be cognizant of what's going on in this moment. And so, if you're going to write a story, and it doesn't matter if it's a story that is directly about climate change or comes at it from some oblique angle, you have a responsibility to tell the stories about the time in which you live. And I think that that's something that we need to impress upon the people who hire us. I was always amazed to learn that Catcher in the Rye was actually a war book, and that it was in Salinger's backpack when he hit the beach in Normandy. And so there are stories that the world is asking of us. And I think if you listen closely and look around, you find them.
That's a fun fact about Catcher in the Rye. Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to also talk about incorporating environmental conflict, because I think, there's so much happening in the world at the moment, and you think of documentaries that are out talking about what's the now. And, in this room, we're speaking to people who are working, in this room and virtually, that are working in film. And I think that there is an urgency to make change, but I think it's also important to recognize that some people are new to this work and that there's a lot to navigate. And what are some recommendations that you would give to someone of where to start when it comes to committing to this work? Because they could be going at it alone, or there's just so much out there at this moment, especially with all the great resources this week. So where would you encourage everyone to start?
Well, again, just on Twisters, with the climate and the story and sort of all of these things, one of the places we always start in is research. And in that story, which is, a big blockbuster, we're still really trying to tackle, truthfully, what's happening when a tornado hits, which is a very topical issue with climate change. I thought it was really fascinating because we got to speak with all these meteorologists, and I personally went and spoke with several female graduate students in meteorology, and that was an intellectual starting point and creative starting point for me for the character, but it makes you realize how massive all of these pieces of a literal changing climate that we're all dealing with are. And then, again, for those of us that are on the road a lot, I really work within the community that I'm in. So in Oklahoma, we have a team of local buyers and local construction paint and local painters. And in that way also, financially in one way, the studio and all of us are supporting the community by buying locally and, from all these smaller stores that would never get the business that we were able to bring. And then afterwards, on that project, we would, again, in terms of the donating, like we had a rodeo and we were able to donate to a rehabilitation center for kids who are working with horses. So, and then it is kind of like the circus coming to town and then leaving, but we really talked with our crews and the people that were from Oklahoma or were from wherever we work about how they can kind of carry that practice on smaller films. They don't necessarily have a huge blockbuster type of thing rolling in all the time, and then they can take those practices and try to utilize them in a smaller local way in their features, and television shows or features.
The last production I was involved in, we had a Canadian company called Green Spark on set. Yay, Green Spark. And I decided, because I was the writer and director on that I never wanted to be accused of keeping secrets, and I was really curious about it. So, we published our results, and we learned a lot, and they worked with our HODs, and, I didn't realize that during pandemic, we had a lot of supply chain issues, and a lot of the plywood that was being used was coming from rainforests. There was a big debate that we had about what was more economically or more environmentally responsible, going to locations or building sets. And so there were a lot of really nuanced issues that we got into. Hopefully we won't have to do a lot more production during times of pandemic. But, Green Spark was a very, very big help. And the other thing that I'll say is, every production that I've been involved with in the last couple of years, there is a sustainability meeting. And it happens at the beginning, and it is very well intended. And then everybody goes back, and that's why I said what I said at the beginning about changing the culture. Then everybody goes back to do their jobs, and their jobs are challenging, and it's really hard. And suddenly foam seems like a really good idea when you're building a set. But foam is not great for the planet. And so Thanks. The anti-foam crowd out in force. So I think we all have to watch each other. And I don't think anyone does it because they don't care about the climate or the planet. I think they care about their job. And we need to help each other in those situations when we're starting to be compromised.
Well said.
Which leads me to a quote from you, Scott Burns, which came from March of 2020, where you said, "I was terrified. Every scientist who I spoke to when I worked on the movie said the exact same thing to me. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when." So I'm obviously speaking about contagion and what became the COVID-19 pandemic. And Missy, you just touched on it about meeting with experts. I'm curious in all of your roles why it matters to meet with those experts, why it's important to include the truth in your storytelling, because I think that's what the audience will see. So I'm curious about that responsibility of why it matters to meet and be historically accurate, if you're doing a period piece, why it matters to speak to experts in this work.
Well, I think for all of us, we're striving to tell the most honest story. And you can't go about any of these real life pieces without understanding, what cloud particles are. There's so much that I actually don't understand. So in order to tell the story of people chasing tornadoes, I even one day was like, what exactly is a tornado? I know I run away from them, but people love running into them. So it was very important, and it's on the screen. Experts are watching. We all do our very best to be the most accurate in that, and I think that's true in whichever story and whichever department we're working in. So I think it's relevant.
Every job, no matter what it's about, whether it's a period piece, a futurist piece, or a contemporary piece, we all do research because every story is unique. And if you took the job because you were interested in it, it's usually because it's not something you know about. And that's part of the drive to work in this business, is to constantly be educated. We don't know, and I think that's even the lesson today is we don't know. We don't know if it's better to get that crew to this location and get, or use the stage. The thing is, I think all of it, I don't know about you guys, so I'll just speak for myself. It's, do I put it in compost or do I put it down the garbage disposal? I'm really still not sure. So, we're trying, but we have to educate ourselves constantly and try and see if we can find what is better. Because I think if we knew, I think we'd make those choices more often. But this company that you were saying that I wasn't familiar with, because it's never been on a movie I've done, it's a great thing to have these companies come in and do an assessment and then show you at the end, because then you can adjust. But if you can't, if you don't know, there's nothing, you're going to make bad choices.
And I think obviously the Academy and this great summit are proving how many people are interested in coming up and building new companies to help with exactly that. I have a friend who's trying to fundraise to buy a fleet of electric trucks to help with the transpo issue. And, the salon we had in the fall brought together production design and costumes along with local Los Angeles vendors such as EcoSet and everyone. I actually, like to Isis's point, I hadn't met or heard of any of those before. And there are foam alternative companies working on it. So people are trying. And I think that's one of the things to kind of celebrate in all of this, is that people are starting to understand how to build off of this.
And also, it is a business, and so there's this whole thing about economics, like, is it business smart? Well, there are some things that are incredibly business smart. Just a very simple one. Local 705, which is the costume set union, they have a place called the Green Room, cleverly called, and you take all your office equipment, all your office tags and bags and this and that. There's a lot at the end that you have left over. You take it over, they store it. If I want to start a movie tomorrow, whether I'm doing $1 million movie or $100 million movie, I can go there free of charge, take whatever I need to start my new office. These are small things, and I know it's small, but at little by little, it'll all add up.
Yeah, by the way, GreenSpark is just one of those companies. I know there are other people who will do set greening. And so, that's an important research thing for people, to do, because it helps a lot. What you said is really true. Until like I spent a lot of time standing in front of garbage cans in my life now, kind of helping people figure out what goes where. And and like deep existential conversations about compost, and couldn't it just go anywhere theoretically if it's going to break down. So the other thing that I just want to caution all of us, like we can't villainize the Teamsters in this, right? And I think sometimes there is, an instinct to go, well, the vans. And they're
Carrying crew.
Yeah, they're carrying crew, and they really want to work with us, and they really want to help come up with better solutions. So, like, we all need to do this together.
Yeah.
It's true, and you touched on, we hosted a sustainability salon with our production design and costume design branch, and we brought a lot of vendors. We had our partners on our sustainability style guide, Black Pearl, with us, as well as EcoSet, Cruise Foam, and Rewilder. And I think it's important to have these discussions with Academy members. As a global organization, people are very disconnected. We have members all over the world working in different disciplines. And it's vital to bring people together around this work. And, we're a 96-year-old institution, so we know that it's going to take some time. And it's my hope that people see the Academy outside of the Oscars, that it's not just one day that happens at the Dolby Theater where people get statues. It's 10,000 artists that are working on this amazing art that we all celebrate, as well as our incredible talent development programs, our sci-tech initiatives, that it covers it all. So I think when anybody in this room is creating, there's from development to distribution, that you need to think of all of those resources to ensure that your story is being told as authentically as possible. I wanted to, talk about technology in this work. I feel like this is sustainability and technology are these two things that where if you blink, it could be a completely different way and model. How is technology helping environmental work and sustainable practices on film today? And where do you hope it goes?
I can't answer that across the board because I'm probably the least technological person, and I still do my job the same way after 35 years. But and now that's not true. I do, I work with the computer and Photoshop and all that. Not that.
You have an email.
I do have an
yes.
email. I do know how to text. So I think that's probably a question for the bigger. I was just explaining earlier, I mentioned Homeboy Textiles, and I just saw this footage from them recently, and there was a machine that was created by this company called Temmo, I think it's called, and it was a machine that took all the textiles, all the pieces of clothing that could sort by color and by makeup of the fabric, whether it was cotton or it was polyester or it was this, to separate all of that, which then could go into the next place. These were the pieces after they resold, this is at the rot spot. This is at the bottom of the level, so that they could recycle them. So that was just, for me, that's the only real technology that I've seen that is in this space, because there's really nothing else in costume.
And then in terms of the art department, production design, and set decorating, technology is huge. I mean, we have illustrators, we have set designers, we have visual effects partners. Everyone, a lot of people are working on their computers now. It used to be all people drafting by hand, which is which is a loss in its own way, but there's still some hand drawing. But that collaborative change has really, so we have illustrations of what the anticipated set is going to look like. We have plans that are digitally distributed. Everything, it's very digital these days. And then again, like I was saying, working alongside visual effects, we really are able to collaborate on a continued vision of what the story is going to be when we're done. And the production designers and the location managers can work with VisFX so that once we're technically off the shooting crew, they're continuing that look and that story cohesively on as well. So it's a united look visually.
You know, as a writer, you know, AI is not going to change anything, so we're all good.
Is there any other technology, Scott, that you think? I love how he went directly to AI. There's no, it was no, oh, well, the typewriter and a laptop. You went directly to AI.
No, look, there are some really wonderful things that you can accomplish with technology. I'm always, and it's good to just talk about these things. You know, on the last production I was involved in, there was a lot of location work that we had to do, and it was difficult again during pandemic because we could only put 2 people in a van. So do I, as director, go out with 20 people all over the East Coast looking for a location, or do we send a drone and then watch the, you know, the drone footage when we get back? I mean, I've had location scouts fly drones in interiors and show me what they look like. And yet then I think, is someone going to turn this into a library and sell it, and did a location scout just lose their job? So it's complicated, and we need to all talk about it and think about what's the best thing for the work we're trying to do, but also what is fair and how can we retrain those people whose jobs might be affected by the technology we embrace.
And I think also we're still telling a human story. So the technology is coming in at different levels, but you still need an art department. You need someone who can sew. You need someone that can move a couch. Like, it's not all going to disappear, and technology is not going to all take over, even though the movies say they are. But I think that these small steps we're all making, and all this information that's coming at us now about ways we can work differently while we're wrapping, while we're shooting, while we're prepping. It's really helpful, and it is really happening. There's water stations now at all the stages. Like, that wasn't even a thing 2 years ago. So it is baby steps, but it is happening on a smaller level, and everyone is looking forward to it continuing.
I would say the biggest difference is distribution. Like we were saying, distribution of scripts. I mean, when they first wouldn't send a script to your house for an interview, you thought, oh, how am I going to deal with this, you know? And now it's, you know, it's in on set rewrites and crew sheets, call sheets, everything. I mean, it's exponentially less than it ever was, and people are now used to it.
I was a PA at one point in time in Minnesota, and I had to copy all of the sides and distribute them every night in the freezing cold, and the call sheets, and
Call
so
sheets under bedroom,
call sheets
under hotel
doors,
rooms.
under hotel rooms. So I, for one, am thrilled that chapter is passing us over.
But it's massive. I mean, if you think about it, even just a
huge.
script rewrite, I mean, it's massive. It can just like bing, and it just goes out.
Yeah, no, that stuff's really been a great change.
As we, close out, are there any last tips or tricks that you want to share with the audience before we say goodnight? I know there's something from each of you.
I'll go first. Again, it's really important, and I think it would be great. First of all, I want to say this. Meredith has been really great in helping kind of move these things to the forefront of the Academy, and I am really grateful to be a part of an organization that does care about these things and is pushing this agenda.
Yes,
So,
it's been great. Thank you, Meredith. Yeah.
Team effort. Thank you, Scott.
The other thing I'll say is it's important to remember that not all of this waste is equal. And we tend to focus on the plastic bottle. And it's kind of gotten to be low-hanging fruit. I will say this, if you're on a production and they have a refill station, but they didn't hire someone to help refill the bottles of the people who are hard at work, you didn't solve the problem. And the plastic bottles will remain. But we have bigger problems than microplastics. Not many, but we do have some. And so that's why things like GreenSpark, where you can really see exactly what piece of the pie you're involved in and how to solve it, is really important.
And I think for, again, the art department and set decorating especially, we really try so hard to, when the show is over, not throw anything away. We, like I said earlier, we send it back to prop houses, we'll donate it to theaters, and a lot of us work on location a lot, and one of the things I always strive to achieve there is to really feel like I'm part of the community, and respect how people do it, and then we'll bring in the way we like to do it, and then someone will also then tell us to change how we do it. So you have to be flexible and understanding of where you are and how that's working, and be open and honest with your teams about what's really the most important part for you as well. I really like to make sure that pieces of furniture go back to women's shelters, or if we have extra dog beds, that they go to a shelter, and that the smaller theaters again and the smaller schools get pieces. EcoSet, I think donates pieces to theaters as well. So all of that way it can go back and other people can tell their own story with pieces.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, we do the same thing. But you have to be intentional about it, because you can just walk away and not know what happens to everything. So it's storytelling, which is still great, because all those little pieces still have a little story to tell. And we did a lot of thrifting on my last job. I just did the accountant too, and we did an immigrant crossing, and I just love doing pieces like that, and it was great to do all the research and shopping the thrift shops for these pieces. I'm also Hispanic, so it was a Latin group coming up from Central America, and it was like all I could think of was like my Aunt Gucha, and you just have all these stories in your head. So there's even in the practice of doing this, it can be incorporated in the beauty of making film.
What a wonderful way to end. Thank you all. The Academy thanks you. I also want to thank our ASL interpreters for their amazing work. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the Hollywood Climate Summit and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give it up big one more time for sustainability in film, everybody. All right, we've reached the part of the evening where there is just one final panel left, the crown jewel in the day 3 that holds up, I gotta say honestly, the entire summit. The critical day is day 3, and the critical panel is right after this. It's at 8:45, okay? So get up, go to the bathroom, come right back, 8:45. That's like not that many minutes from now. So come back, don't be late, 8:45. 8:45, see you back here.